Hey everybody, welcome back to day number 12 in my 30 days for 30 releases, new age releases slash ambient records from the 1970s and 80s. Um, Today's album review is on Mark Isham's Vapor Drawings, and of course Mark Isham was also known in Group 87, which I just reviewed this week as well. This was a little bit more synth pop. Um, but just looking back into Mark's career, I'm reading from his bio, so just bear with me, just so I can kind of get a little bit background for him. This is his first time on the channel. He's an American trumpet, synthesizer player, and Academy Award winning composer, or Academy Award nominated composer. He's been featured on David Sylvain's probably two most iconic solo albums in Songs of the Beehive and also Brilliant Trees. Um, he also, actually, Bernie Grundman mastered this album too. And this is actually the first album to sort of be categorized as, not sort of, but first album to be categorized as electronic music on Wyndham. If you guys know Wyndham, which is more of a jazz label, but did some new age as well. And these are always really liked their inner sleeves. They always did a really great job of their pressings. They're really nice design and very classy, very respectful. I always really respected the Wind Hills. They were so well done. You almost wanted to buy them, even if you didn't think you might like the music. And so the ones that were sort of ambient, new age related, I always looked forward to, and I always bought when I was in older record stores that had that sort of style of music. But yeah, Bernie Grundman mastered this album too. He used the Prophet 5 and also a sequential circuits drum machine in here, so some really strong couple pieces of equipment that Mark used in here. This is probably the only album of his that I'll review. The rest of his albums probably go a little bit more jazz for me. But I might check out Tibetan and Castilia, which I believe are his other two albums that are sort of in this vein, that are at least new age. So I'll probably check those out and review those out. But after the kind of most of the 90s, he went mostly into jazz and doing soundtracks. And his list of soundtracks that he's done is just, 40, 50, 60 deep. Just movies that pretty much everybody's heard. I don't even want to mention any particular one, but there's just a whole bunch of fairly popular movies that he's produced. I don't know them that well. Probably seen a couple of them, but I don't know the soundtracks that well. But a very well respected soundtrack producer, that's for sure. The good thing about this album, I've had this album for about 25 years, and in fact, it was the first Wyndham record that I ever bought, and I remember that he was part of Missing Persons, and the name sounded familiar, and of course the artwork is great, so I figured it was like ambient, so I gave a chance on it, never having heard before. And it's always been a well liked album by really anybody who's really heard it. It's probably been name checked in the 80s from people that I know, probably more so than any 80s new age album. It always gets well respected by people that like ambient music. The good thing about it is it's a nice mix of ambient and a little bit of jazz. I really like the electronic parts, of course, more so. The keyboards and the synths are really nice. The bass lines are nice. It almost sounds like a Fairlight as well. I'm not sure if it is or not. Because he's the trumpet player, you would think he would go too far and probably do too much of the trumpet to sort of put it off for me. But he never does that. In fact, when he does, like on In the Blue Distance, it really shines and really works great. So he never goes overboard. In fact, it really seems, and from what I read, he was really trying to make an electronic album and not do a more jazz album or do a lot of the trumpet. So he really focused in on the electronics on this album, and it really shines because of that. If you're into electronic music like I am versus jazz, really nice. The coloring of the music, very gentle, whimsical, nice sounding electronics, great tones. There's a lot of great like sustained notes, and really, it sounds like how it looks, and that's the thing that I really like about ambient music, when it's about the colors and the artwork, and like it's very minimal picture, but it kind of looks like maybe like a glass sheen, or shine off it with kind of a light coming through it, sort of reflecting some colors. Like it sounds like that. It sounds like the tones in here and the coloring on that. It matches that coloring. Like that, those colors match the mood for me. It's not overly blue. It's not overly bright. It's a good mix of some pastoral kind of fairly light colors, and that's how the music sounds to me. Is it looks like those colors. That's always one thing I learned from my friend called Matt Jarvis, and I think Brian Eno did some stuff in that too, as far as like the colors relating to the moods and the music relating to the tones of the colors and stuff like that. And you think of like blue as generally a somber, sometimes more depressing color, and sometimes those sounds sort of meet those colors, and it's great when you can kind of match up the artwork to get a gauge of how it's going to make you feel. Right? Obviously, there's not a pinata and a bright colored firework going off. If it had something like that on there, you wouldn't think it was nice and moody and more of a chill jazz and new age ambient album. You know what I mean? So it's I like when you can kind of get an idea from the cover art in ambient music and new age, and then it actually delivers. I was talking about that earlier with like prog rock and stuff like that, and some of their artwork is really cool in the 70s, but it looks a lot more psychedelic than it really is. And then you hear it, and it's just like, I was hoping for something a little bit more trippy. It's just kind of like, it's Uriah Heep. But like Uriah Heep's records, the covers are really cool. Another one is Robin Trower's covers of his albums are really cool. And obviously, he's a great guitarist and producer, but and I do like some of those albums, but I think that artwork would have fitted better for like Tangerine Dream or something like that than Robin Trower's albums. But anyways, it's just cool when the artwork can sort of meet your expectations on what it's going to sound like, or the music of live up to the anticipation of your expectations because of the sound work. There's 7 tracks on here, so not too long of an album, but a lot of times if it's going to be 9 tracks on here, but most of these tracks, I wouldn't say it's probably on the longer side for a vinyl, generally vinyl only release at the time. 9 tracks. It's kind of, there's a couple tracks there's 3 tracks over 6 minutes, so but there's a couple tracks around 2 and 3, 4 minutes, so it's got a good balance of longer tracks and shorter tracks. And it's a very consistent record too. The first track, Many Chinas, kind of ambient jazz. Really like the opening keys and the melody. I give it 2 3/4 stars. Track number 2, Sympathy and an Acknowledgement. Really nice sequencer. This one's a little bit more experimental, so I even like this one more. I got 3 1/4 stars. On the Threshold of Liberty, I gave also a 3 1/4 stars. This one apparently is the original version of a track that he remade for the 2000 film called Rules of Engagement with Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson. So it did sort of sound a little bit familiar, but I don't remember seeing that movie. But it does sound a little familiar when I was reading it while I was listening to it. But yeah, that track's 3.25 stars too. I mean, it sounds like a soundtrack song. But you can't knock it because it's powerful. Track number 4, When Things Dream. The opening starts out kind of jazz, but then halfway through it becomes synthesizer, and I really like the swirling sound, and it really goes well with the title of the song because it goes into sort of like a dream state, and it really takes you there, and that's a 3-star track for me as well. And then you go to my favorite track on the album, Raffles in Rio. This it kind of sounds like what you would expect. In fact, I think there's probably another song with the title named Rio. I think it's called Riding to Rio on the Strange Cargo record from the Strange Cargo series from William Orbit. He had a track called Riding into Rio or Riding from Rio or something like that. Right, and it sounds like that's how it would sound, like you're riding into Rio. And this one's called Raffles to Rio, and so you kind of expect to hear the kind of that, sort of Brazilian or kind of that. It's a little bit, lush with the forest, a little bit ancient. You're getting into like some culture and sort of ambient mix and that sort of tribalness, and sure enough, it sounds like that. It fits in really well with this album too, and it's a highlight of the album. It almost verges on what's going on right now in Balearic kind of ambient house. Like this song would fit really well into a lot of the ambient like house and Balearic kind of psychedelic scene that's going on right now. There's a lot of mix of traditional Balearic kind of sounds of like the ambient house and kind of mixing in with a little bit of psychedelic and even a little bit of techno, some slower techno and even faster techno, not like super fast, but so this track fits in really well. In fact, if I did like a compilation, I would probably try to contact him and see if I could use this track for a compilation because it fits in really nicely with what's going on right now. Nice tribal feel, nice gentle melody, layering. It's a little bit playful. It's got a little bit of ad-libbing onto it too, and it does a good job of staying away from being cheesy. 3.75 stars, my favorite track on here. Something Nice for My Dog, track number 6. I give it 2.75 stars, solid. Track number 7, Men Before the Mirror. Really like the rhythm. It's a nice darker turn halfway through. Very much sounds like a Tangerine Dream track, which was really exciting when I was playing it. Sometimes I forget about this track. Often I play the first sides and sort of then get into Raffles and Rio, and I always forget about this track. Turned out to be my second favorite track on the album from scoring it. 3.5 stars. And then track number 8 is my least favorite on the album. Funny how that works. You go to your favorite to something that you like least, but this one's called Mr. Moto's Penguin. Might be the cheesiest, but still the electronics are good enough to where it's passable. Give it a 1.5 stars. And then another really good track, and it's the ending. I also have it 3.5 stars, called In the Blue Distance. The last minute or so is really nice too, and this is where he sort of adds the trumpet and sort of ad-libs on it, and really nicely done over the beautiful keyboard. Great balance, inspirational ending. You can definitely hear in this that he would be a good producer for making music for movies. Like this is really a really good balance between soundtrack and new age music. A lot of times one is too much farther on one or the other. Sometimes it's a little too new agey and sort of the keyboards take a lead and the melodies are just kind of a little too poppy and grandiose and trying to be too big, and it kind of puts me off a little bit. And then you have soundtrack music, which is kind of the same way, but in a non-new age way. And here he kind of mixes the two and puts them right in the middle to where it sounds more like an album than it does like a soundtrack. And so that's perfect for me because that's ideally where I like it to be. A little less soundtrack and more towards an actual album for something that isn't visual. That's what I look for. And if it's a soundtrack for a movie, right? Like, let's say it's a military movie, like I don't know, Hamburger Hill. You're sort of going to be like, okay, well, I don't really want to, listen to a soundtrack of a war. It's pretty brutal war, Vietnam War. I don't. It's not going to be that, or whatever it is. It could be. That's kind of a difficult example to, but let's say it's like something that's more historical, like Nixon or something like that. You're like, oh, soundtrack for Nixon. Okay, it might be in the '60s. This might be a retrospect of it, but it'll be kind of dramatic and not too deep, kind of historical sounding. Probably be a little bit dramatic. And you know, maybe there'll be some rock in there because it's in the '70s, and if Nixon's always known for his part in Vietnam and stuff like that, and Watergate, so it can be of that time and sort of hippie-ish too. So I don't want to listen to that. But the nice thing is when you go to an ambient record and you just look at the title, Vapor Drawings, your mind just kind of wonders about where it's going to go, and that's why I like the open canvas of albums versus even more so like soundtracks, because soundtracks you pretty much know where it's going to go, and something like this you have no idea where it's going to go. I mean, there's only a picture on it. I mean, the titles of the song do a little bit to kind of hint at where it goes, but he has a track on here called something nice for my dog, so you have no idea what he's going to do here. But I'm happy to say it fits the artwork. It exceeds expectation. It's well produced. Not only a good mix of a new age and soundtrack album, but also a good mix of electronic music and some jazz and some new age. So I add up the stars of the song, and the song's in its 27.25 stars, so it's a little bit over a 3. So I got it a little bit over 3 as well, and I got a 73 out of 100. I gave it a couple extra points as well. So yeah, 73 out of 100, right on the lower side of a very good, strong new age album for sure. Curious if you've ever heard Vapor Drawings. What is your score, and what do you think of this album? I'd be curious to know your thoughts. All right, thanks so much.